All right. Hey YouTube, I'm Lucky, and I'm back once again. It's time to rank all of the hand cannons in Destiny 2. I did this way before. I did a PvP and a PvE ranking. If you haven't seen those videos, go ahead and check them out. Although they are very dated now, because 120 RPM hand cannons have been nerfed, and that has shifted the sandbox tremendously. And so now in today's video, to clarify exactly what this is, I'm ranking all of the non-sunset hand cannons currently in Destiny 2 for PvP. And if this video gets 1,000 likes, I'll do a PvE version, just like I promised before. So go ahead and smash the like button. And of course, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Here we go. Starting off from the very top, the first weapon we're going to rank is the Ace of Spades hand cannon. We're going to start off with one easy, so that way we can set what we're looking for, you know, what the bar is at high, and so that way when I rank things lower than the Ace, you'll understand exactly what I'm looking for. All right, the Ace has a damage boosting perk, which is always really nice. That increases the time to kill sometimes on 120s, but not on this 140 specifically, but sometimes increases the time to kill. It also will increase the ease of use, and it will increase the range of this weapon. This weapon already comes with a base range that's amazing. The damage boosting perk has no timer. It gives you your radar when you're ADSing. I mean, you can't say enough about the Ace. It's constantly in the top 10. There's no reason why anyone out there shouldn't see this as being an S tier hand cannon. Currently in the meta right now, in the sandbox right now, these 140 RPMs are the strongest RPM for PvP. They're the most popular, the most used, and so good. Moving on to the next one now. That we've set the bar high as we can understand what we're working with. We're going to move on to the Loud Lullaby hand cannon. Now, this is a moon hand cannon, and it is that 120 RPM that has now been nerfed. So I'm going to put this in the A tier category. Surprisingly, you might think, well, what? No one even uses these 120s anymore. Some people do use these 120s, and if you are going to use one, Loud Lullaby is actually a pretty good option. It does roll with Kill Clip, which with these 120s, you get that Kill Clip procced. You now can 2-tap people. Super strong. It does also get Eye of the Storm. Slide Shot is a great option there. Moving targets there. There's a lot of really good perks in both columns for the Loud Lullaby, and I do think that 2-tap potential is really important when using these 120s. It actually adds a lot of power to these weapons. You know, back in the day, those 2-taps with Rampage were amazing. We're not in that era anymore, but there are a few 120 RPM hand cannons that can still 2-tap, but they just have to have Kill Clip on them. So I'm putting the Loud Lullaby in the A tier category. Moving on to the next one, we're going on to the Judgment hand cannon. So we've got another 140, and I actually put this in the A tier as well. And the reason why I put the Judgment in the A tier here is because it's just not nearly as dominant as the Ace in comparison. Its perks overall are good. You got Slide Shot. Opening Shot is a great combination. It does have Adrenaline Junkie, and we'll see what Bungie does when they buff that. It does also have Moving Target, but overall, its overall perks are just not so impressive that I'm like, yeah, this is definitely an S tier hand cannon. There are a few other legendary 140 RPMs that will be going in the S tier category along with Ace, but Judgment is not one of them in terms of PvP, in my opinion. If you disagree, feel free to comment down below. Moving on to the next one, we're going to be talking about the Volpakula 180 RPM hand cannon. I'm going to put this all the way down in the B tier category simply because these 180s are easily the most difficult to use out of all the different archetypes, unless you're rocking a controller. If you're on console, if you're on controller, these tend to be some of the better hand cannons to use. So it's kind of like, how do I make this video? Do I want to focus all mouse and keyboard? Or do I want to focus all controller? I have to at least combine those two elements. I chose to separate PvP and PvE for this ranking, but I'm going to combine hand cannon and controller here. I'm going to combine mouse and keyboard and controller rather, and I'm going to put this in the B tier category though, because even if you're on controller, this is still not like the most lethal, awesome weapon to use. It's just the recoil feels a lot better because on controller, the recoil of the 140s and especially the 120s can be a bit wild. So the Volpakula, one of the best in PvE, but in PvP, its overall perk set is just not the best. You know, it's not really what you're looking for. You're not trying to use shoot to loot in PvP, so Volpakula will go into the B tier category for the 180 RPMs. Next up, we have the Annual Skate, one of my favorite hand cannons, truly such a good weapon. I'm going to put the Annual Skate in the A tier category. It does have some good perks on it. We've got Slide Shot, you've got Opening Shot, you'd have Time Payload, which is kind of like a weird perk. Some people like it. It's got like double flinch, but also the delay and people dying can be a bit weird. So overall, its perks are not so impressive that I will put it in the S tier category with the other legendaries that will go in the S tier category that we'll be getting to in just a moment. So the Waking Vigil, or the Annual Skate rather, goes into the A tier category. Next up is the Waking Vigil though, and the Waking Vigil is such a tough one to grade because it has such awesome perks on it, but I am putting it in the B tier category simply because its base range stat is just atrocious. And range is just so good on these 140 RPM hand cannons. You need solid range on 140s or even any other hand cannon for that matter. You want that range stat to be nice and high and bump that up. And because the Waking Vigil comes with such low base range, you pretty much have to get like a perfect god roll on. You have to rock rangefinder, snapshot on it, stuff like that. So it makes it a bit frustrating just to make it compete with the other 140s. So I'm going to put the Waking Vigil in the B tier category, even though it does have such an awesome perk pool selection to choose from. Next up, we have the Criminal's Dagger. Now, this is a weapon that's currently unobtainable, but the rolls that this thing can get are insane, especially for a 120 RPM. I have to put this in the S tier category. And you might think you're absolutely insane to put a 120 RPM in this current sandbox in S tier category. This can get Outlaw and Kill Clip. Now, reload is painful on these 120s, and adding a reload perk in that slot is awesome. That's something that you don't get with the Loud Lullaby. Loud Lullaby doesn't have that reload perk, so that's why it goes above the Loud Lullaby, above the A tier category, even though no one probably has this weapon, or at least if you do, it's sitting in your vault. But definitely don't laugh at the Criminal's Dagger 120 RPM hand cannon in the current sandbox. This thing is so beast, especially Outlaw Kill Clip. That's such a good roll. Next up, we have the Ancient Gospel 140 RPM hand cannon right here. Let's go ahead and pull this up. The Ancient Gospel is going in the S tier category. You might think to yourself, what? The Ancient Gospel? No one grinds the Garden of Salvation right now. But if you did, you'd see that the perk pool on this weapon is amazing. The base stats are great. This weapon can get Eye of the Storm rangefinder. It can get Slide Shot rangefinder. You can get Kill Clip on it as well. It has such a small perk pool that actually getting a god roll, it wouldn't be that hard even. It's just no one wants to do Garden of Salvation. It only comes from one encounter in Garden of Salvation. So very unfortunate. But if you do have a god roll of the Ancient Gospel, you're having a good time in the current sandbox. That's for sure. I wish I had a roll that had Eye of the Storm rangefinder. That would be so nice. Next up, we're going to be talking about the 7th Serif Officer Revolver. And this one's going all the way down in the D category because we're using that 180 RPM, the most difficult archetype to use. And the perks on this are just so PvE oriented. It's hard to justify using this thing in PvE at all. I mean, in the first slot, we've got Threat Detector, Ambitious Assassin, 4 times the Charm, Firmly Planted, Pulse Monitor, and Underdog. Those are all PvE perks. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to judge this weapon well in PvP. If you do rock the 7th Serif Officer Revolver in PvP, I salute you. You are one of the few, okay? Next up, we have the Posterity Hand Cannon. Okay, the Deep Stone Crypt, 180 RPM hand cannon. Now, I do rank this one a little bit higher because it does have a little bit better perk options, okay? We got that opening shot on it. We got Rampage on it, which is always really nice. You know, we got on that Rampage. It does have some other cool perks on it that you don't see in other weapons. Got Reconstruction and stuff, and Killing Wind is nice as well. So I do rank the Posterity a little bit higher. But again, these 180s, there's no way I can really put these 180s up anywhere near S tier right now, in my opinion. At least unless you're rocking controller and you're finding a way to hit all those headshots and you've mastered it by now. But overall, I just think that it's a B tier hand cannon. Next up, we have a big option though. That's the Fatebringer. I'm going to use the time loss version, for example, but time loss or not time loss, the Fatebringer puts in work. Obviously, you all know I'm going to be loving the Fatebringer. This is like my main hand cannon for both PvE and PvP, if I'm being honest. But this season, because there's no mods for hand cannon champ stuns, I'm choosing to use the Fatebringer mostly in PvP, but it's such a good weapon. I mean, the perks you get on are insane. You can get Explosive Payload, Frenzy for PvE, but for PvP, you're looking for that roll that I've used all the time. You know what I'm talking about. We got Eye of the Storm on that bad boy. We got Explosive Payload. So good. I love my Time Lost Fatebringer. If you haven't got one, make sure to get in the Vault of Glass and grab one of these. That's an S tier hand cannon for sure. Next up, we have the Dire Promise, and this one is a tough one to judge. A 140 RPM hand cannon with such good perks on it, okay? Snapshot Rangefinder, amazing. The recoil on this weapon, amazing. The only problem with this weapon, the reason why it doesn't hit S tier, is because its base stats still resemble that of the 150 RPM archetype that was diminished by Bungie a long time ago. And so basically, when Bungie brought all those 150s over and turned them into 140s, they had really poor range stats and really poor base stats overall. And that's why the Waking Vigil sucks so bad. The Dire Promise also falls victim to that, which means that all new 140 RPM hand cannons have intrinsically really good base stats, especially the depth ones that can get, you know, masterworked and then get a little bit of boost to all the stats as well, which is why the Palindrome is so good, right? Next up, we're going to be talking about the True Prophecy 120 RPM hand cannon, a weapon that I loved for a short period of time when the 120s became meta. You know, you had that moment where you're like, hey, what do I use? Oh, True Prophecy. It's right there. But now the True Prophecy, it's tough. I had to put it all the way down in the B tier in the current meta, which is hard to do, but it's just the handling, the reload, the recoil of this weapon. It's just tough to use. I mean, you can get a roll that has like rangefinder and elemental capacitor, and if you are using like an art class, it could be really, really good. I think that could be like the god roll in the current sandbox, but overall, I just don't think that True Prophecy hangs in there enough. I didn't feel good putting it even in the A tier category. And so that's where I'm going to place the 120 RPM True Prophecy hand cannon in the current sandbox in Season 15. Next up, we have the iclose hand cannon, and the iclose hand cannon gets the D treatment, of course, because the iclose hand cannon just belongs in PvE, okay? It's just a PvE weapon. I mean, listen to these perks. This is the first perk column. Subsistence, triple tap, slideways, not too bad. Slideways, threat detector, and Genesis. I mean, that is a PvE hand cannon if I've ever seen one. And it's a great weapon for PvE, but seriously, not the best for PvP. So we're putting it all the way down in the D tier category. Next up, we have another 180 RPM hand cannon that we have to go over. The Nature of the Beast. Now, this one got me in a lot of controversy recently. If you saw those couple videos there, I said that this was a god roll sold by Xur. It had quick draw rangefinder. It had like great range and handling as well. People were roasting me, saying it's not a god roll. It's terrible. It's a bad gun. Listen, this weapon is a pretty good 180 RPM hand cannon with the right roll, quick draw rangefinder. It's a pretty good 180, but it's still a 180, and it doesn't really compete that well with the 140 current meta right now. But each their own. Some people will be rocking controller, and if you like rocking the 180s, if you like doing things a little bit different in PvP, that Nature of the Beast that Xur sold, hopefully you grabbed it, and hopefully you're slaying out in PvP with it, because it is a great weapon of its archetype. Next up, we have the Steady Hand, the Kinetic Iron Banner 120 RPM hand cannon. This one's going in the B tier category. The reason why is because it has some really poor base stats in terms of stability and handling. It's very low on the base stats. It does get some really good perk options, and obviously if you're rocking that like cheesy bow combo where you're like shooting a bow and swapping to a hand cannon with quick draw, I mean, this is kind of one of the best options for that. But I'm not going to talk about that too much because I think that's a really cheesy way to play, and I don't want to encourage much people to go do that. And so I'm going to put the Steady Hand in the B tier category because it's a 120. They aren't meta anymore. They're pretty good if you get like the right roll and you can make it happen at those extended ranges. Like Widow's Court is a decent map where you can make rock a 120. But of the 120s right now, I think that the Steady Hand is not up there like it used to be because you can't roll that kill clip on it like the others that I think are much better because of that. Next up is a bit of a controversial one here, okay? It was painful for me to do this, but I had to put the Igneous Hammer Adept in the A tier category. I really wanted to put it in the S tier, and I was thinking about putting it in between the two, but I settled on A tier. And the reason why is because, one, we're rocking a 120. We're going to have that poor reload, that poor handling. We're in the 140 RPM hand cannon meta. It's very hard to put those 120s up there in the S tier. It doesn't have kill clip, so it can't get that increased time to kill. It does have one for all in it, but no one's procking that in PvP. Let's be honest, all right? You're not procking that PvE consistently. Maybe randomly by one odd chance you will proc one for all. On a 120 that shoots so slow, oh my gosh. If you do pull that off, kudos to you, but that is really, really tough. So we have to put it in the A tier, but it is so good. It is so, so, so good. If you're not looking to 2-tap, if you don't care to 2-tap, honestly, Igneous Hammer might be the best one for that. I just tried to rank these hand cannons based on both what you should use in Trials or could use in Trials and what you could also use in Rumble and what you could also use in Clash and Control and Iron Banner, and trying to be fair to essentially the best version of the hand cannons for all PvP as a whole rather than just specifically Trials. Because if it was specifically Trials, I would place the Igneous Hammer over the Criminal's Dagger personally. But in the Crucible as a whole, I think that this is the right way to rank this. So that's what I'm sticking with. Let me know if you disagree in the comments down below. The Palindrome is up next, and you already know the Palindrome is getting that S tier treatment. The Palindrome is like S+ tier. So good. Such an amazing weapon. Quick draw, rangefinder, base stats amazing, recoil is amazing, range is amazing, everything is amazing. Adept Palindrome. Make sure you get this. Make sure you're using this in PvP. This thing is so good, so much fun to use, so strong. Controller, mouse, and keyboard, doesn't matter. Try to get a god roll so that way you can just feel like an absolute god in PvP with this thing. Such a strong weapon, an S tier weapon for sure. Next up, we have the bottom dollar 120 RPM Gambit hand cannon. Now, although this thing does have some pretty impressive rolls, it has a massive perk pool, which means finding a god roll of this thing can be so tough, but it does have some cool perks on it. We got explosive payload. We've got I have the Storm on it. You know, it's got some great perks. Slide Shot on it as well. Rangefinder. I mean, it's got the classic, the good perks, but getting that God roll is rough. One, because of all the different perk options, and you have to play Gambit, and you have just the RNG of this weapon dropping. And so it's tough to get it, but if you can get that God roll, I will put it in the A tier because the absolute God roll and the best roll of that bottom dollar will slay out pretty hard in PvP. It's got a really nice archetype. It's got great base stats. So bottom dollar is good. Bungie obviously put a nice little carrot on the stick there if anyone wants to venture in there and actually play Gambit. Myself, the answer is no, but to each their own. Some of you might enjoy Gambit, and if you do get that God roll bottom dollar, it's an A tier weapon in the current sandbox. I'm telling you right now. Next up, we have the Survivor's Epitaph. Okay, this again also has a massive perk pool, but from 180 RPM connoisseurs around the world, they have all told me that this is the 180 RPM to use. Okay, you got Kill Clip on it, which is an awesome option. You also could rock Eye of the Storm if you really want. Snapshot, Slide Shot on it. So many good perks. Quick Draw. There's lots of great perks on it. If you're looking to use a 180 RPM hand cannon, this is supposedly the it hand cannon. Essentially like what the Palindrome is to that archetype. This is the it hand cannon of the 180 archetype. So that's where I'm going to rank it in the A tier. That's the highest ranking 180 I can put in the current sandbox. And even that pains me a little bit because, you know, we aren't seeing these things anywhere near the top 10 in trials or in PvP overall. But I do think that with the right roll, that is actually a really strong weapon. I'm putting it in the A tier category. Here we go. Next up, we have the Finite Impactor. Oh, the Finite. It has a little bit poor base stats in some areas. And along with that, Iron Reach is like its best perk, but the problem is that you have to lose stability with it. So it's like, do I really want to do that? And then you have Eye of the Storm, which is also a really good perk you can get on it. Overall, I ended up putting it in the B tier category because it just overall doesn't perform as well as you'd like it to comparative to the other 140 RPM hand cannons. It's not a half bad weapon in and of itself, but it doesn't have the best perk pool overall and just doesn't hang in there as well as the other 140s in my opinion. So Finite Impactor gets the B tier treatment. Next up, we're going on to the exotics, and we're going to start off with the Sturm. Now, the Sturm, a great exotic, that 120 archetype, of course, but you got to rock the Sturm and the Drang. And that Drang, it ain't doing much in the current sandbox, and it doesn't have any air accuracy, and it's that 120 RPM, so I'm putting it all the way down in the B tier category for the Sturm. Next up, we have the Crimson. Now, if you're on controller, whether on PC or on mouse or on console rather, the controller Crimson is amazing, probably S tier. But if you're on mouse and keyboard, not quite as strong. So I'm going to throw it in the A tier as a little bit of balance between the input devices. Crimson, very, very good, though. Definitely see that weapon make it in the top 10 consistently in trials and elsewhere. Such a strong weapon. Next up, we have the Malfeasance. Now, the Malfeasance does have a really cool perk in that you can shoot 5 body shots and it just kills people, which all the other 180s don't do that. However, the time to kill of shooting 5 body shots is so atrocious that you would never really want to play that way. If you're playing against any good players at all, they would kill you every single time by the time you'd get those 5 body shots off, because that's an atrocious time to kill. So you don't really want to play that way, even though the ease of use is amazing, right? Just shooting 5 body shots, people dying, that's not the way you want to play. So I am putting that in the B tier category for the Malfeasance. Next up, we have, apparently I got the Thorn and the Last Word on the same graphic here. So the Thorn I'm putting in the A tier because it doesn't have in-air accuracy, and it lacks a little bit in range, and it's bugged currently with its perk right there. So unfortunately, Thorn needs to get fixed. Right now, it's in the A tier category. If it got its bug fixed, it might be S tier, but even still, you know, the range is low, no inner accuracy. We're putting it in A tier. And then the Last Word I'm putting in the S tier because if you are in controller, this is S plus tier. If you're on mouse and keyboard, this is probably A tier. So I have to balance it out with the S plus tier controller Last Word, and then the A tier mouse and keyboard Last Word. We're throwing it in the S tier, okay? That's where that one goes. Then next up, we have the Lumina hand cannon. Oh my gosh, if you use this and use it right, buffing your teammates is actually extremely powerful and a lot of fun. It's like a different playstyle overall. Lumina definitely belongs to be in the A tier category. Such a strong hand cannon, and it's that 140 archetype, so it slays out. It does well. Lumina claps. It's a very good weapon, and you can buff your teammates and yourself. It's awesome. Lumina, a great weapon choice in the current sandbox. Next up, we have the Hawkmoon, and I was so torn about judging the Hawkmoon that I literally had to put it in between the S and A tier. All right, the one weapon I had to put in between both because the Hawkmoon does have, you know, great perks. It's got random rolls. You can get rangefinder on it. You can get other great perks that you might like on it. It doesn't have that inner accuracy though, so I'm led to believe that maybe it should go closer to the A tier, but it's such a good weapon overall. It's so consistent. It's like I couldn't make a decision, so I had to put it in between S and A tier, and that's where that goes. Maybe we'll call it A plus tier right there for the Hawkmoon. Such a strong weapon in the sandbox though, definitely worth using, putting some time in. The Sunshot, I had to bring this one up. Sunshot I put in the A tier category. Honestly, it might even go down into the B tier category, but it does have like technically the best time to kill with that 150 RPM speed, right? Like back in the day, it's the only 150 RPM, right? But overall, Sunshot doesn't seem to perform as well as we would like in the current sandbox. The 140s tend to outshoot it consistently, so I am going to put Sunshot in the A tier category. Plus, it doesn't have that inner accuracy like you would like to have. You know, it's always good to be able to jump up in the air, whether you're Hunter main or not. Jumping in the air is always good. Warlock, Titans even jump in the air, etc. Moving on to the very last exotic, we have the Arias Vow, and I did put this in the A tier category because if you're rocking an Empowering Rift, which I'm not trying to encourage people to do this, but if you're rocking an Empowering Rift, using the Arias Vow is so nasty. Or if you're swapping off to something else, you know, this is such a strong weapon. Arias Vow, very, very strong in the sandbox. Obviously, it uses special ammo, so it's hard to compare a special ammo weapon to primary ammo weapons because all special ammo weapons are just like stronger intrinsically than most primary ammo weapons. So I will put it in the A tier category though, because in the current sandbox, you're not seeing everyone run around using Arias Vows a ton, but there are a few applications and ways to use this that are a bit cheeky here and there, and that's why I'll give it the A tier treatment. Let me know if you agree or disagree. That's the complete list right here. The complete list of everything. S tier, A tier, B tier. I didn't put anything in C tier, but I put stuff in D tier. Those 2 hand cannons down there, they were just so terrible. Let me know your thoughts. This is again for PvP, my rankings, and if this video gets 1,000 likes, I will do a complete list, but I will rank them for the current PvE sandbox and PvE meta. And that's a wrap on this video. Make sure to subscribe with notifications on. If you did enjoy, smash the like button. I'll see you in the next one. Later.